Hello everyone, good afternoon. Well, we will be talking about yogic introspection on self-realization. It's a big word. We'll be discussing this with Jennie Lee. She is an author, coach, and a mentor. She is going to be joining me live from Hawaii right now. So, oh, there you are. Great.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you again. Great. So, well, the topic is introspection on self-realization. It's a big, big topic, I know, but how do you now break it into smaller things?
Yeah.
Before that, let me introduce you. Jennie Lee, we were talking about it yesterday. She is a yoga therapist, an author, best-selling books. She has written 2-3 books, and she has had her own journey of, I would say, self-realization and introspection. And now she is, much happier, and she's going to make us more calmer and happier. That's a funny thing, but so anyway, I must have missed out a lot of things, but if you'd like to add something and take us.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. Well, this is certainly, not a moment when many people are practicing introspection. We're all, watching the news and watching the polls, and it's a lot of outer focus. But in the practice of yoga that I have been in for the last 20 years, one of the teachings has to do with, spending time every day to go into stillness and really listen inwardly. And so that first step towards what's called self-realization, or the understanding of who we truly are, is to take some time where you actually unplug from the outer world and what everything is happening on the outside and what everyone else is saying and doing, and you just spend some time in stillness. So that, of course, can lead into a practice of more formal meditation, but it can also just be a contemplative time when you sit and sort of reflect on your day and on your life and ask the questions like, am I living the life that I want to be living? And if I'm not, then what is the gap between where I am today and where I would like to be? And so it's a lot about envisioning who we want to be, how we want to feel inside of our lives, the kind of life that we know that we can be living when we're kind of imagining the very best, and then determining what we need to change inwardly to get to that place. And so that's very simply the practice of self-reflection or introspection, where we're turning our focus inward and starting to ask some questions to ourselves, to our souls, to our spirit, to that higher wisdom of intuition that lives within us.
That's really, so it happens to a lot of us, like the years or the decade would go by, like 20s or something, or 30s, and suddenly a lot of people in their 40s think, oh my God, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And then, we haven't really gone into the self-realization. So, but you talk about the 108 inspiring prompts in your book. So that's a lot. So maybe, I don't know how you can synthesize and tell us what to do.
Yeah, sure. So as I've been a yoga therapist for 20 years, and that practice it's a counseling practice. And so I'm working with people who oftentimes are in transitions in their lives. Maybe they're making a career change or stepping out of a relationship that they've been in a long time, or they're reevaluating their lives and themselves. And so I have found that asking really engaging questions that get people to think beyond kind of the way that they typically think on a day-to-day basis is very helpful. And so when I started the process of writing my third book, Spark Change, which is, you can see the cover of it back there. This book is a book of 108 questions, like you said. And these questions are based on the types of questions that I would take my coaching clients through as they're going through some type of personal change. And obviously, we're all going through different types of personal change all the time throughout our lives.
Yeah.
Some of those changes are self-initiated, and other of those changes are kind of happen to us. You know, someone dies, or we get fired, or we have these other things that occur. But every time we're in a transition, it's really an opportunity to be more intentional about how we're going forward in our next steps. So these questions are laid out into 12 themes. And the 12 themes really are, in my opinion, the kind of arc of change that we go through. Okay. So it's about assessing what change needs to happen or is happening, determining the values on which we want to base our movement forward, kind of our core values, looking at our belief structures and what might be standing in our way, because oftentimes we have really self-limiting beliefs that make us unable to kind of move forward and make changes because we feel afraid. And then I don't have all 12 of them memorized in my head, but it has to do with, there's a chapter on willingness, there's a chapter on accountability, there's a chapter on inspiration and purpose, and kind of really getting clear, you know. And so all of the questions are ways that I have found to help people get more clarity from their own inner wisdom, you know, rather than seeking the answers outside, but really going inside. That's that self-realization, right? On many levels. It's both recognizing what is most important to you as an individual self, but then ultimately, as it goes deeper and deeper, it's going into that recognition that we are all part of one great spiritual self. And so how do we then experience that sense of that which is greater than our personality?
So that's very interesting. And I think, I mean, all of us, what you're suggesting, should you take a moment every day, like a few minutes, and try to introspect ourselves and talk to ourselves, like, what is it that I'm doing, whether it's making sense, my higher purpose, what is the, right? That's what you suggest, that all of us should do that on a daily basis.
Yeah, and my hope with this book, Spark Change, is that it will give people something to go to. So it's not a book that you read cover to cover. It's a book that you can pick up and read one page, and each page has a question, and it has a little guidance, like the type of guidance that I would give a client as to how to think about that, how to be self-reflective about that question. And so it's a nice thing, you know, to have on your table, maybe before you go to sleep, or when you're having a cup of tea in the morning. And I've had people tell me that they really love just opening the book randomly. Because there is this thing, you know, the universe knows what we need. We're in kind of this dialogue with the universe all the time, if we're listening. And so when we open something randomly, oftentimes that right question for that right moment just shows up. And so it's been really fun to hear stories from people who have opened it up and gone, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I needed right now.
So do you mind opening up randomly right now?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I love that.
Let's see what comes out, you know?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so just gonna open randomly. Oh, this is a perfect one for right now. So it's question number 84, and the question is my consciousness based in love or fear? Oh. And so, of course, you know, this is just something that we're all dealing with right now. Everyone has their fears for the future. There's so much uncertainty in the world. Yeah. And it's not just the political thing, but it's the pandemic that we've been dealing with, and all of the changes that have come into our economy. And so, you know, really looking at this, I'll just read a little bit of the guidance that goes with it. So it says, our ego nature loves to be self-sufficient and trusting entirely in its own strength. But without the sustenance of source or spirit, we eventually tap out on our personal capacity and are left feeling limited and afraid. Fear mutes the voice of the soul, closing off access to our intuition. And although it often happens, we need not wait until we hit the bottom of our personal ability tank before we open to the grace of love. The recurring thoughts you allow to fill your mind determine your overall state of consciousness. If you notice that your mind is filled with worry thoughts, it's a sign that you are probably trusting too much in yourself and not enough in your loving maker. To shift from fear to love, begin by acknowledging and accepting your vulnerabilities, and thereby create an opening for source to work with you As you live more from trust and love, decisions become easier and more peaceful. A consciousness based in love will never lead you astray. So it's
beautiful.
yeah, it's a big internal shift. I know, but
Yeah.
I know it's also possible.
No, it is, and you know, we talked about the sutras yesterday, right? So how do you piece it all together? What we're talking about, the introspections today, you know, in this book, the Spark Change, and then you talk about the Yoga Sutras, which we talked about yesterday. So what is the binding
Correlation?
Yeah,
The
what is the
correlation between the two.
correlation? Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked yesterday about the Yoga Sutras in my first book, True Yoga, and how in that book, I break down the 8-limb path. And one of the limbs, called the niyamas, is comprised of 4 practices. And one of those practices is introspection. So the practice of introspection, or, you know, moving closer to that recognition of true self is very fundamental to the 8-limb path of yoga. And when actually, we haven't talked about my second book, but my second book is about one of the other niyamas, which is the practice of devotion. And the book is called Breathing Love. So I'm trying, maybe I'll have a whole series, who knows, but I'm trying to do deeper dives into each one of those limbs of yoga. And so this one, the practice of introspection, I feel is really, really fundamental for us to move forward in a conscious and happy way in our lives, personally and collectively.
Yeah, and when you say niyam, niyam means niyam is a Sanskrit word. I'm assuming, right? So niyam means discipline, right? Or what? That's
yep,
or a rule or something. Niyam.
They're observances, actually.
Observances.
Observances. So
one of the observances is introspection in one of the things, and then introspection comes in a different way, which is a separate book you've already written, and within the introspection you have 108 questions to introspect oneself, right? I just want to make everyone understand
yes,
the correlation from here to there, and how do you go deeper into the 108,
right, yes.
Okay, got it. Any feedback from anyone who's joining? You're welcome to you know, chime in and comment feedback and anything. So what else would you like to tell people?
Well, I think, you know, given the current climate and what everyone is going through right now, you know, at this point, we don't have decisions over anything in the political sphere, and whatever happens will affect each one of us differently. Yeah. And so in terms of the practice of introspection, what I would say is that however you react, however the ultimate decision, let's just take the political thing right now. So whatever the ultimate decision is about the presidency, and however you feel about that, try your best not to react, right? Because reaction usually comes from a very emotional place, and it's not always our highest consciousness. It's a trigger response. And so the practice of introspection says, take a moment, take a breath, pause, you know, go inward for a moment or more and breathe and just reset, you know, settle yourself and ask yourself things like, what is the most important quality for me to embody right now? So maybe that's patience. You know, obviously we're all having to practice patience right now. How can I choose love over fear in this moment? How can I contribute to peace in my environment, my home? Maybe you're in a home with people of different views. How can I contribute to peace? How can I stay anchored in my core values if they're not being reflected from the outside? You know, these are the kind of questions that all have to do with introspection, and it's just a way of kind of bringing us back to the center of ourselves, rather than flying off in a million different directions in reactivity. And that's such a practice that brings us to greater peace.
And peace is needed. I mean, the only way you talk about it, that the peace, you can accomplish peace, is by, of course, finding the peace within each one of us, and then only we can give peace or to other people, right, who are around us.
Exactly. And one last thing I'll say about that is that, it's interesting that we opened to that question about, is my consciousness based in love or fear? Because fear is the greatest contributor to a lack of peace. Right. So much of what happens in the world that is not peaceful is because of fear. And we contribute to our own lack of inner peace when we're in a consciousness of fear. So to introspect and take the time to shift away from fear and towards compassion, towards kindness, towards love. These are ways in which we cultivate deeper inner peace and stay out of that reactivity that fear brings up for us. Fear is that fight or flight response, and we don't want to act from that. It's just not going to bring us happiness, and it's not going to bring us to any good ends in the world either.
And you also talk about making peace with the present moment, right? Like whatever the moment could be, whether it's external or which is completely out of both of our control. But as a human being, you suggest in your book to make peace with the present moment, whatever the present moment comes in, without any control of a human being, for that matter. Right.
For sure. I mean, that's why in the book Spark Change, I'm talking about these self-reflective questions based on whether you're initiating the change or the change is just happening around you, because there's not many times we don't have any control over the changes that come into our lives. But we do have the power of controlling how we respond to those changes. And that's really where we all are sitting right now. It's like, how do we make a choice for the highest level consciousness of peace and unity and compassion that we can, regardless of what the external circumstances bring?
And you also talk about resilience. When the challenge, we are all facing challenging times in a very different way, right? So what would be your mantra for coping up with these challenging times?
Resilience is the ability to come back again and again to what you feel is the most important thing. So in the chapter on values, to establish what your core values are, that gives you this baseline where if you go away from that, you know where you're coming back to. And it's like in sitting meditation, when the mind wanders off, we just gently bring it back to our focal point, whether that's the breath or a mantra or whatever. But that's resilience, right? It's like you fall off, you come back, you fall off, you come back. And so it's like how children learn to walk, right? They fall down, they get up. We encourage them. And we have to encourage ourselves internally, and we have to encourage one another. Like, we're human. We're going to have our moments when we become afraid. We're going to have our moments when we react negatively, go into judgment or fly off the handle or whatever. But we can come back to our stated values, our higher qualities that we know are our true nature. And that's the resilience. That's the practice of resilience, really. It's just coming back.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I think it's really beautiful. But the work that you're doing, it's very inspiring for me, and I hope for all the viewers. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For spending.
I look forward to hearing from people. I love, getting comments or questions. So please do reach out on Instagram, or my website is my name, JennieLeeYogaTherapy.com.
Yeah. People are welcome to leave comments here. I mean, we chose really strange days. We didn't know. So people are watching elections. Most of the people are watching elections, but hey,
hopefully this was a nice little break, hopefully. And
yes. And we can do other series in future of, when things settle down. Thank you so much, Jennie. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.